group. We had some good discussion in the chat. We went through a bit of content, started just to get your head around what this thing of a road safety audit is. And now we're going to delve a little bit further into sort of what is the process of undertaking these audits. So remember, we talked about road safety audits at design stage, just after or during construction, after construction, and we're hearing there a bit about the existing conditions and thematic road safety audit for specific road users. So let's talk about within each of those, like what is the process that we would go through? So this is where I want to jump into defining the 8 official steps of a road safety audit. And it doesn't matter which stage it's at, you're sort of thinking through these 8 steps and point you at where you can get some further information about these. After we go through this little bit, we're going to jump into one of our particular road users and delve into some of their needs. So, before I read a few of those things, there's a New Zealand directional sign. I might come back to this sign a little bit later, but I will give a prize if somebody can tell me what is wrong with that sign. And then we'll talk a little bit about that. But type it into the chat, you'll get a prize. I will come back to this after a few slides. Road safety auditing is a fairly straightforward process once you know these 8 main steps. It does take time though. There's a fair bit in it. It certainly adds value to a project, and it really needs to be an integral part of the design process and should be integrated into what we're sort of thinking about. But these are the 8 steps that we talk about. They're in the Australia's Guide to Road Safety Part 6. I'll fix that slide. It should say 6, not 6A. And get my pen going. And I'll take you through them one at a time. But we've got selecting the audit team, then sort of providing and gathering all the information you need, some sort of commencement meeting, exchange of information, assessing documentation and inspecting the site during daytime and nighttime, reporting of it. We did like a couple of work examples of how you write and report this stuff, some sort of completion meeting or handover of information, and then responding to that audit report. So let's go through this. Oh, sorry, almost forgot. The most vital one is actual implementation of change. Otherwise, there's really no point in doing it if we're not going to actually take and make changes if they're warranted. Okay, so an audit team needs to be selected. So once an audit, it's decided an audit will be done, and then the team is selected, and an audit team should have a road safety audit lead. Now, in a lot of jurisdictions, they'll say a senior auditor must lead. That's because they have this category of senior auditors and road safety auditors. New Zealand doesn't have that sort of categorization as such, but what your guidance documents talk about are the leader should be an experienced road safety auditor with a history and background in the topic or the type of audit being undertaken. So. And then road safety auditors, maybe people who are still getting experience, could be, just other very experienced ones. And then you can have others along, observers, trainees. So sometimes you might involve the school principal of the area or the local police officer, or, it could be some other a bicycle advocate or something like that to round out a nice team. So really, it's the client's responsibility to appoint the team. However, in practice, what happens is that it's usually sort of given to a consultancy or a particular person, and then sort of entrusted that they will put together an appropriate team for this. So, yeah, it's usually handed on. It's important that everybody sort of understands what this process of road safety auditing is and it's all about, just so everybody's got the same expectations. So a few little tips on that. Really, team is important. That we don't expect a one-person road safety audit to be done. Maybe for a very small job, low risk sort of thing, but for anything substantial, we would expect a team to be used, and team meaning more than one. Now, what is sort of maximum size of a road safety audit team? There is technically no maximum, but I think it's just the ability to manage the process and the people involved. But I've been on audits with up to 5 people. It gets a bit chaotic and messy. And yeah, for some very sort of small stuff, have done single person road safety audits. But even with that, our quality management processes mean that somebody else has to at least review the work. Ensuring all team members are independent. Well, I think we all were very comfortable with that last time, and you did well in my little quiz. And only an experienced auditor should lead the team. And the team leader's responsibility really is to guide everybody, to make sure that they're doing the task, meeting in the right place and all of that, but also make that final call on any issues and that might be slightly contentious amongst the group. Yeah. So in an ideal world, we would have audit teams that have a broad mix of road safety experience across infrastructure, behavioural, human factors, all sorts of other things, different professions, different mixture of ages, different empathy with all road users, but maybe different experience with road users, males, females, others. We really want to have this holistic view of this proposed road or existing bit of road. In practice, it can be very hard to put together a team like that. It just doesn't work in practice. But keeping that in mind as ideal is a good way. And here's an example. I was out running an audit. This is a while back, but and it was us 3, and we are all male, all about exactly the same age, all started working together in the State Road Authority about the same time and worked most, our career there. So really we were going to view the design of the road in one particular way. So we identified that. We said, well, perhaps we could involve somebody sort of very different to us. And we got Wendy and asked Wendy to be involved. And Wendy is a bit older than us, female, and a scooter rider. So she rode through the route and, really gave a very different, not an engineer, and gave a really different take on the proposed road upgrades. But yeah, you've got to be practical, obviously, and if you're working for a client and it's time sensitive and there's all sorts of other constraints, you put together what you can, but keep that in mind. Jump in with any questions at any point, Kathy. Otherwise, I'll just keep ticking along a bit. I will ask. We'll come back to that sign we talked about shortly. Okay.
There was a comment that came through from Nick saying that the RCA road safety engineers should appoint the team. This is our Northland procedure, and level of auditing is set at the job brief stage. This was to stop project managers believing they are the client and the safety engineer.
Right. So that's a great comment. So road controlling authority, road safety engineer appointing the team. And that's consistent with what the Austroads Part 6 would say. Occasionally, practices within organisations or controlling authorities are slightly, delegated under their own policy, and this, a few other ways. But that's a good process. Okay, so assessing the documents. So we've appointed this team. This team's been engaged, and then we've got to hand over all of that documentation, and that's sometimes done in the commencement meeting. It's sometimes done with an email and phone calls and exchange and the like. I do like the commencement meeting. Sometimes, I mean, often it doesn't happen, but the commencement meeting is a nice opportunity to sit down with the project team, the designer and others, and ask questions. Okay, why is this happening? What's over here? Why are you doing this? What's here? What design vehicle was used? What checking vehicle was used? What was, lots of getting an understanding of it all. And the designs, and maybe saying, oh, well, have you done the drainage plan? I can't see, I didn't get a drainage plan. Is there anything there? They may say, oh, we haven't done that yet. If you notice anything in the audit, please, mention it. So it helps everybody along. But, again, in practice, it may not happen. You may not get to sit down with them and spend that time. And it may be you're given the design and you have a quick phone call and you say, can you quickly answer these questions? Then you get all of that, and then you either, spend a lot of time looking at your designs before you go out on site, or you fairly quickly go out on site and then you might spend some time. I like to have a really good look at the designs with my audit team before going to site. I do use a bit of street view first off to try and gather some understanding, and that we'll look at it, we'll talk about it. Okay, they're proposing this, because I need to visualize in my mind what's being proposed. So I'm spending time gathering that in my head, because you get out on site and you're looking at the plans, you don't quite know what it is. It's hard to understand how it's going to tie in with the existing infrastructure, what's going to be altered. So really getting your head around that, I think, is important. And then you get out on site and you go there during the daytime and the nighttime. And as I mentioned, what you're trying to do, if it's a design road safety audit, so the existing road is there, but that is not what you're auditing, unless it's an existing conditions road safety audit, as Mike beautifully told you about. But let's assume we're talking about a design. You're not doing the road safety audit on the existing design. You're doing it on what it will be like after they build what they have on paper. So why do you go to site then? Well, you go to site to understand how it links in with what's existing there, understanding, what's around, the use of the land, how it might work, whether it changes things, what's off in the distance, the site, any site issues, existing constraints. So you're just imagining whatever it is built where it is, and then you're looking for the issues after it's been built. So there is a temptation from new road safety auditors to take the plan and then comment on a whole lot of things that are there existing. And you say, but they're about to rebuild that. That's not going to be an issue because they're changing this whole environment. So audit for the future. You're auditing the future when it's been built, if it was built exactly as per the plan. Why do we go out at night? Okay, so lots of reasons. One is, things are different at night. Here's a nice example of where you can see the directional sign quite clearly and the like. But at night, it's gone. You can't see it there. So, okay, there's a sort of basic example, retroreflectivity of signs and the like of existing signs that may be retained in the future scheme. But you also get some really interesting things that pop up at night. Okay, you say, well, the road alignment's going to go through here and you're going to get headlights from all of these other vehicles that are coming around here, and you can see that. Or the street lights off in the distance really look like this road goes straight, but actually what they're planning is for it to turn. Or, the street lighting might really change things up. So lots of different reasons why you should go out at night. Now, I will admit, probably, one in maybe 10 audits do I have a meaningful nighttime finding. But, that one was often pretty important. So yes, okay, you might not have it, all of these, there might be a few where you go, actually, I picked everything up during the day. It's not adding any value, but nonetheless. Right, Kathy, did anybody come up with an issue with this sign, or everybody's comfortable with it?
No, there was definitely issues. So we've got gap on the wrong side, anti-clockwise circulation only, left versus right, breaking the roundabout circle in the wrong place.
Just struggling a little to hear you there, Kathy.
Oh, sorry. Is that any better?
That's much better.
Oh, yep. Good. Yes, a gap on the wrong side.
Yes, good. We'll take that. And there we go. Okay. Now, why have we got the gap? And I think the next comment from Melanie there was about circulation direction, clockwise, anti-clockwise. And of course, we go clockwise, but the gap is there to provide that subtle reminder of the direction we travel around roundabouts. So there you go. There's some proper roundabout signs with the right gaps. I suppose the question is, what does this really matter? And is this going to be a big road safety issue or not? Well, no, probably not. I mean, most people are going to happily go to the roundabout, and they're not going to turn the wrong way because it's very obvious, and the geometry takes you through there, and it's all quite good. But wow, Wayne has even jumped in. So this group is so good, they even answer the questions before I even ask them. But I was going to say, if you were auditing, what sort of environments would you up the risk a little bit? And Wayne's jumped in there beautifully with unfamiliar drivers, so airports, popular tourist areas. Okay, I mean, this sign is near the airport, and some of you probably know this sign, and but it's not directly the one you get as you are coming out after you've got the rental car. But in these areas, I mean, I think we've got to have unfamiliar drivers. We're also going to have drivers who drive on the other side of the road. Right? We're going to have drivers coming from countries that don't have many roundabouts, the US, and so thinking that they can potentially be quite confused. Now, I'm still not saying that this is like catastrophic risk level, but what I'm saying is that we need to adjust our risk rating according to some of these other factors that are out there. Now, these sorts of issues, when you pick them up, ideally at design stage, so you'll see the signage plan and you'll go, well, hang on, you've got your gaps on the wrong side. That you can pick them up and then they're, of course, rectified. Now, here's one out of Hobart International Airport, and this is the first roundabout you hit from getting a rental car. And this one, it does get me a little bit concerned. And luckily, after I stopped the taxi one of the times because I couldn't help myself and took the photo and then showed it in the audit course in Tasmania, it was quickly rectified with a nice sticker and sticker over that side and a sticker there to alter it. But contextualize your risk. So a couple of prizes given out there, Kathy. So then you go about writing up all these findings. And there is a fairly standard way of writing a road safety audit report, a description of the project, providing a list of the information you were given. Okay. Now, I really stress that this is important, not just saying was given the drainage plan, the signage plan, and this, but saying the plan number, the version, the author of that plan. And the reason for that is just personal experience that you undertake a road safety audit and then 5 years later, the lawyers call or the road authority calls and says, we've got to go to the coroner's court and you're coming because you did the road safety audit on the bit of road where the person has died. Okay. And then you start to look at it and you go, okay, let's drag out the plans that I looked at. And then you look at what was built and you go, well, it's very different to that. So you're sort of covering yourself in the sense that your documentation will say, I undertook or we undertook a road safety audit of these plans, and here they are. Okay. What eventually got built was very different to that. And so, you're not at all being looked at for any issues with the audit as such. So yeah, just be aware of that. List of audit team members and the dates things were carried out. Some people like to put in the weather conditions for the site inspection and those sorts of things, and a logically arranged list of safety issues. Now, in New Zealand, you have a standard template for a road safety audit. You get it off Wakakatahi website, it's a Word document. It's got all of that in there. It's all needs to be filled out, and you can put your own branding on it or the like. But consistency is a good thing out of these audit reports. Now, you will be using that document for your road safety audit in this course, so you'll get used to it. Some of you will be very familiar with it. So you've filled all these out and risk rated, made recommendations, and off you go. And then that's handed over to the project team, the designer and the like, and it's up to them to respond to the report. Now, when I say respond to the report, it's not necessarily that they give you a response as an auditor. They may just respond and keep it on their own records. Your job as a road safety auditor is technically done when you hand over your final report. You don't need to check that they've done things. You don't need to check that issues you identified have been rectified or anything like that. You're providing an advice piece over to the client, and then you're done. Now, clients often will provide the audit team with responses to their audit findings to say, yep, we agree with that and we're going to change this, or no, actually we don't agree with this for these reasons and we're not going to alter that. That's all okay. And it's nice for the audit team to get that back, but technically they're not required to get that. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we want to see this implemented. We want to see the changes in the design, and we want to see, safer things coming along. There is a little bit of information in the guidance sort of saying what the suggested actions are for different risk levels presented. Okay, so serious issues in the audit identified by the audit team, major safety concern that must be addressed and requires change to avoid serious safety consequences. Significant, should be addressed. Moderate, should be addressed again, and minor where practical. So that's just a little bit of guidance for the receiver of these audit reports. So when that audit report is given to the project manager during the exam, everybody should be keeping file copies of that. I mean, that's just good practice all round, but just keep copies of your past audits. You don't know when they'll be dragged out for one reason or another. So you just want to make sure you've got that copy. So the project manager really needs to respond in writing to all of the recommendations of the audit report. As I mentioned, doesn't need to go back to the audit team, but they need to keep that on their records. You don't want that audit sitting on the file, which had a whole lot of findings and recommendations and no responses from the receiver of the audit report, just sort of sitting there. That's not going to be good at all. We're not going to get any of the safety outcomes, and from a legal standpoint, you're sitting there on a smoking gun, as they'd say. Responding is a vitally important part, and really has to be an accepted part. Okay, a few little things to remember. If you're receiving that road safety audit report, remember, you know what you're responding with could become a public document. It's good practice to respond to the audit team, so they have to record that as well, but it's not absolutely required. But as the project manager, you need to remember that The audit's been done to help reduce risk in your project, but it is your project. Right? And you make the decision on what happens or does not happen. The road safety auditor does not have legislative power. It is an advice piece. Okay, admittedly, you are going to be receiving advice from somebody with specific training and qualifications and experience in looking at safety issues. So, if you're not going to act on things, you want to really be confident in your justification of reasons not to act, but that is fine. You can disagree with audit findings. You can say, thank you for that. I agree with your finding. I disagree with the way that you're proposing to reduce risk. And in fact, we're going to do this instead to reduce risk. This is all fine, right? But as long as it's that good process of the project manager looking at it, making really thoughtful, conscious decisions, are they accepting that? Are they going to make alterations to their projects accordingly? Or are they not going to? And what is the sound basis on for them not, undertaking what the auditor recommends? Okay, Kathy, questions or comments on that as I jump to first of the road users that we delve into in specific detail?
Thanks, Ken. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we've got some comments in about see a lot of RSAs that overstate an issue as being serious when significant would be more appropriate. Classic, you're always talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, people new to auditing always over risk rate. And I can kind of understand why, because what we're asking auditors to do is visualize a crash happening due to an issue. And as soon as you visualize that in your mind, you cannot get it out of your mind. And you're just like, oh my God, like this is going to happen. I do a little trick, which is to reverse risk rate it in a sense. I say, okay, they're going to build this exactly as it is on this design. I'm going to come back in 5 years' time. But how many serious injuries or fatalities am I expecting to see in the crash records because of that particular thing that I'm looking at? Okay. So I go, okay, the line, like take that roundabout sign. They've got the gap wrong. Okay. All of a sudden I'm going, oh my God, people are going to drive the wrong way around the roundabout. We're going to have head-on crashes. It's going to be chaos. And I visualize it, right? But then I go, okay, I'm going to come back. How many head-on crashes are going to be because somebody had the confusion of that? And I'll go, be lucky if there's one. I mean, unlucky if there's one in 5 years, and probably really one in 20 years. Yes, a little bit, maybe if it's at an airport, maybe we're down at 1 in 5 or the like, but still it'll be a very infrequent thing to happen. You've got to start really sort of, thing like that. So that often helps me to calibrate my risk rating and to understand, how many crashes are there on the road network, and how many intersections are there, and how often are we seeing different crash types at different intersections. It helps to calibrate your risk rating. But do agree with the point made. And I'm sure in this group I will be marking and saying, okay, is a good finding, and you've described it well and everything like that. You've risk rated it well above what industry would risk rate this. All right, but that's okay. You're starting to learn how to calibrate that. Any other comments?
We've had some comments that about documentation. So Wakakatahi requires that we keep a copy of all audits in TIO as part of our funding agreements with them for subsidy. It's not always done by all road controlling authorities.
Yeah, okay. So the centralisation of audit findings is sort of a pretty nice idea. If you're able to collect audit findings, recommendations, and commitments and then track those. You've got a good way to ensure that things have been rectified. It's also a really nice way at a policy, strategy, standards, guidelines perspective for authorities to identify issues that just keep coming up. You know, if they go, wow, okay, this year we had 100 audit findings on this particular issue, you know, they can look at, okay, does industry not understand this? Have we got our guidelines and standards wrong? You know, and they can start to look into try to rectifying that from a systemic level rather than, you know, relying on the audits each time to pick up this specific issue. So we, so that's always very good. One of the things that I recommend for local governments, so road controlling authorities at a local government level, is to have a bit of thinking about your road safety audit policy. Most don't have a road safety audit policy, but that's something that we put into the back of the Austra's Guide to Road Safety Part 6 as a template road safety audit policy. So there is something there that road controlling authorities can grab, can establish, and then it sort of walks you through thinking about when you would or would you not do road safety audits, like, you know, what's your choice on that? And I have had a nice conversation with one of the participants online about, you know, that decision making around when audits should be done. How many audits? I mean, okay, you're building a new splitter island. Do we need to do 5 audits? You know, feasibility, detailed design, you know, during construction, post opening? No, I mean, the risks on that are low in the scheme of things. And, you know, that level of scrutiny and independent evaluation is just way beyond what you do. So, you know, risk-based decision-making around when audits should be undertaken. But at a council level, you don't want to leave that to randomly to individuals, do you? You don't want, you know, the one project manager does audits all the time and the other one doesn't, because, you know, when there's a crash and they go, well, why wasn't a road safety audit done? And you go, well, that's because Jimmy did it. He doesn't do road safety audits. But Fred, he would have definitely done a road safety. I mean, you know, that's not going to be looked on favorably by any legal systems. They just want to know that there's a consistent policy and it's got some merit and some risk-based decision-making associated. Okay, that was good though, good questions. And I see a few more things are coming in, are they?
Yes, a couple more questions. Some designers get quite defensive in their responses when a road safety audit is done. How can we reduce or manage this behaviour? Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, it is a critical look at a design. And some of the ways that I do that is a little bit of thinking about how you write up the finding. I sometimes like to acknowledge constraints. Okay, you go, and I think I've got an example maybe later, and I actually, yeah, it's in a sort of supplementary. We might get to it in the last session, but yeah, you're looking. It's a barrier example, and the barrier's too short, and they've used a trailing terminal instead of an approach terminal. But there's an access point right next to it, and it's pretty like. You can see immediately why the design has done this, because they don't have space, right? It doesn't mean it's not a road safety issue, but they don't have space. So instead of sort of, you know, writing it up in a very much a way that could be read that the designer didn't know what they were doing and used a trailing terminal instead of a gating redirective energy absorbing approach terminal, like a proper terminal, yeah, it's saying, the auditors acknowledge the constrained space and that the designer has elected to use a trailing terminal instead of an approach terminal at this location due to that space constraint. However, this still presents a road safety issue and you know, carrying on from there. So it's saying, I understand you were locked in there. So that's one. Also in the recommendations, to be sympathetic a little bit to the varied
challenges of major projects and projects, and trying to provide options that give meaningful things that they will be able to do. Now, that's a bit of a balance, because you don't want to be giving them the opportunity to just whack up a sign when there's an inherent fundamental issue with that thing that they're proposing. So you've got to be sort of balancing of it, but you don't want to be the auditor that's suggesting grade separations of local streets and these sorts of things, which that will just be looked at and certainly get the designers and project managers offside.
One more for now.
Yeah.
How do you get an auditor to separate their personal view of an overall solution from highlighting the safety elements of the proposal, particularly when taking that through all the audits from concept to detailed design? If closed out at concept, should they still be bringing them up through detailed design?
It's a good question. Well, there's a few things to delve into on that. Is, first of all, you don't need to use the same road safety auditor throughout the life of a project. So that some project managers and designers actively like to swap auditors, get a different set of eyes on it. And as a particular Department of Transport team that's their own internal policy, is that they'll get one audit team to do the feasibility, and then they get one audit team to do the concept. They get one different one to do the detailed design, and because they want to see different eyes on it, they want to see different perspectives on it. They want to see they want sometimes an issue, like if 3 audit teams in a row all pick up that same issue that they slightly disagree with, or we don't really want to do anything about that, but then they're like, oh, okay, 3 of them now in a row have all come up with the same thing. We better really do something about it. So that's one option on that. Yeah, I mean, that it may just play out that continues to be brought up because the auditor passionately believes that's going to present death or serious injury, and then the same response is put in there, and it just sort of can continue through. I don't like the idea of a project manager or a client dictating what an auditor does or does not put in an audit report. You've eroded independence under that scenario. So I think at a client side perspective, you're going to end up just having to have a really ironclad response. If you're passionately disagree with it, you just keep doing that through that. Or, as I say, maybe get a new auditor. But then again, I don't want people shopping around for auditors until they find an auditor that doesn't present that issue that they don't like. So, there's a little bit of a balance. I do have a dream of one day, one day that auditors are all in a big pool, not like physically in a swimming pool or something like that, but in a pool where if you need a road safety audit done, you request, and the next auditor off the top of the list is given to you as the auditor or as the lead auditor. That everybody's got set rates, so you can't be going, well, got to get the cheapest audit or whatever, it is like that. Complete independence, because you haven't made any decisions on who you would be getting there, and then the next auditor comes up and the next audit goes out there, and there's some practical challenges around sending people to different islands and and different areas and things like that. But the idea would be nice because you get that nice independence and anyway, haven't seen anybody do that yet.
The taxi rank at the airport, that's what it is.
Yeah. That's Should we have a little stretch break? It's a little. I've got a presentation now to talk about pedestrians, but let's take a 4-minute break. Stretch, stop the waters, and we'll get back in.
Thanks for the questions, everyone. If you've got more, keep them coming through.
I lost you.
Ken, we're not quite seeing your screen. It says your screen sharing.
Okay. Can you see it now? No.
No. What about now? Yeah.
Okay.
No, we can see you.
You got me now?
I got you now.
Okay, let's try this again then. Can you see that?
Yes. Yay.
It looks like my computer took a rest. Well, everybody took a rest. Okay, so what we do as part of the course. So Austroad sets a bit of a syllabus for a road safety audit course, and what it does is it asks that each of the road users, there's a few insights into the particular needs of each of the road users. So we're going to talk about pedestrians for the rest of this session. Next session, we're going to look a bit into heavy vehicles. We've been looking generally at vehicles, as in cars. We're going to have a particular session on cyclists and motorcyclists as well. But so this one for pedestrians, we want to cover off a number of things. So what are the requirements of pedestrians for safe travel? We're going to point you at some technical information available, common issues, and then some terminology. So for pedestrian groups at greatest risk: the elderly, the young, the disabled, and the intoxicated. Okay, so in terms of pure numbers of deaths and serious injury, the intoxicated are far and away the greatest proportion of deaths and serious injury of pedestrians compared to the others. But each presents sort of unique risks and challenges, and we've got to think about all of these in our design of infrastructure. So there are these three basic pedestrian strategies. Segregation being that this is an area for pedestrians and not vehicles, or this is an area for vehicles and not pedestrians. Separation in time or space, and integration where pedestrians and vehicles are sharing the same area. So let's have a quick look at that. Obviously, segregation, motorways is your classic example from that perspective, where we should not be seeing pedestrians on the motorway. Unfortunately, we do occasionally, and we have people getting out of their vehicles for one reason or another, but the theory at least is that the pedestrians will not be there. And then the other end of that is the segregation in terms of only pedestrians in an area. Prize for the person who can tell me where that is first. It is Queenstown. Well done. Kathy, you can work out who said that first. I saw it came up a few times. Separation in time is basically utilising that same bit of road for pedestrians at one point in time and vehicles in another. So your pedestrian signals and the like, very much that. Or scramble crossings, very much that. Actually, I'm in a little prize giving frenzy here. Somebody tell me another name for this type of crossing, a scramble crossing. What's another name for that? What's the more, I suppose, technical term for a scramble crossing?
Wow, that is the first time that someone's known it, and everyone knows it.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
No, mostly I maybe get one first. Well, I get one traffic engineering nerd that knows it. We've got a whole course full of them.
Ken.
What's that?
You've just called all these people nerds now.
All right. It's a term of affection, meaning that they, are really obsessed with knowing everything they can to save lives using infrastructure. I call myself a nerd all the time. Yes, a Barnes dance. Must be Mrs. or Mr. Barnes came up with the idea. We do have a safe system snippet on the topic there. Interesting little thing. But yes, it's utilizing that same bit of space. Separation in space is where you're trying to, provide those footpath sidewalk facilities or refuge islands. And then I just popped this one in as a little one for note. Like this is a Danish offset crossing or a Z crossing, depending on what you call it, but it's where you walk in to a central island and then along the island. So in and along. And the reason, saying that's wrong is you want to configure it so a pedestrian walks towards traffic. Okay. Again, it's probably not going to be, your intolerable, catastrophic, highest risk level. But when you've got the space and you've got the choice to do that, it just makes sense to make them walk towards traffic to see and create that eye contact and or visual thing there. And another interesting one about those, refuge islands is the sort of space provided, and the general, and this is taken out of your one of your guidelines there, but the general rule of thumb, so you can see there it says at least 1.8. But when I'm auditing a design and it's got that, and you're looking at it, and I like to use the general rule of thumb is if a father or a mother is pushing a pram, they shouldn't have to decide whether they or their child needs to be in live traffic. Others will talk about a bike. You should be able to fit a bike in there without wheels sitting out into traffic. Or you may be thinking about mobility scooters or other road users and have they got the space there. Separation in space also, things like pedestrian overpasses, but I do stress that as auditors, we need to think about will people use it? Okay, so if you want to get over to the BP there, it looks like, and you're here, well, that's annoying, isn't it? All the way up there and then down here and then down here and then back there. It can be easier to just sort of scoot across there, isn't it? And there's sort of pedestrian desire line is the term that's usually used there. It's from point A to point B and draw a straight line. That's pedestrian desire line. And pedestrians do not like deviating off their desire line, and a lot of them won't. And so be aware of that, and just think that maybe pedestrian overpasses aren't the ultimate answer in a lot of situations. Some situations they might be. Integration is that idea of a shared zone. So this is where pedestrians and vehicles will share the same area, and you've got some good examples of shared zones around New Zealand. Keep giving out prizes. Anybody tell me where that one is? I think, did I take that photo out the window? Maybe no, I don't think I did. Yeah, Hamilton. Look at that. And even saying exactly which office window it was taken out of from Melanie there. What a group. This is the Tron. So the idea of a shared zone is that pedestrians have priority throughout the whole area. And there's a bit of design advice, and I like to think of the design advice on creating a shared zone when I audit a shared zone. And anybody got any ideas on what that design advice is? Pretty sort of simple, generic, high-level principle design advice for creation of a shared zone. Anybody got any ideas on that? So Peter's popped in low speed, and that is a great principle. And Pip's popped in there, changed the color of the road. And I like that road in quotation marks, because that's the kind of philosophy we're going with. Design for low speed, absolutely. No, yes, no, yeah. So you're all absolutely getting it really nicely done. And I can sort of try and summarize all of that up into the principle I was going for, but I like everything that's being said there. Is don't make it look like a road. That's the design of it. Don't make it look like a road. Now, by doing that, we hope it's low speed and lots of these other great things that I've seen there. But really, if a driver is in there and sorry, I'm just going to try and see. Yeah, like this, if this driver is in there and going, am I even allowed to drive in here? That is a great shared zone, because it's going to be slow, it's going to be really, cautious and the like. There's some really great comments in there around urban design and you're putting yourselves in the shoes of a walker. Would they feel safe in that space? So this is excellent. Okay, I'm going to dive now into some specifics of auditing and common things that come up when auditing and thinking about pedestrian safety. And there's a lot of linking with, great urban design philosophies and active transport philosophies and the like. But let's have a look, and let's start immediately in the slip lane. And slip lanes are a fascinating topic. And there's a few different opinions out there in our industry, and they're very strong opinions. And that's okay, it's good. And we're getting, there's some research out there. But the general philosophy of concern is that as you you get into a slip lane, and as you're driving up to the point where the pedestrian will be crossing, where are you looking? You're looking to see if you've got a gap and you can put the foot down and go. And so as we have the pedestrian coming out, you're looking the wrong way, but your car's going forward. And that's the issue of concern. And so then thinking about what are the appropriate treatments to put on a slip lane if you must have a slip lane. And, those are, well, if you put a pedestrian crossing like this one, a zebra crossing, okay, are we actually increasing risk for pedestrians? Because the driver's not going to be looking, but the pedestrians now really probably not going to be looking because they've got priority. Anyway, we've done a snippet on it. We sort of put a hierarchy of this. Basically, no slip lane if you don't need it, and then raising it, slowing the speeds on all of the different forms of control is good, and then you're down to some other ones, like signalizing it is better than the pedestrian crossing in this unique scenario. The other one, though, to note around this is that vegetation. And as a road safety auditor, that's another sort of important thing for us to think about, not just, when it's first built, this new infrastructure, is it all going to be good, but how is it going to sort of play out over time? How is it going to grow? And are they using? So you will have a quick look at the landscaping plan and try and understand a little bit about that. We want to think about where pedestrians are storing in areas and swept path of larger vehicles. And Fergus Tate will talk to you a little bit about sort of buses and pedestrian storing in areas and challenges with mirrors and those sorts of things. But really thinking about not like the fact that we do have pedestrian storing in areas and vehicles taking swept paths. And unfortunately, we do see pedestrian fatalities every year involving large vehicles sweeping over pedestrian area storing. We had a very tragic one in Melbourne last year. A few people died, an intersection that wasn't constructed that long ago in the scheme of things, and certainly just could not accommodate large vehicles. So we're also thinking a little bit about pedestrians, facilities, or lack of pedestrian facilities. So if this example here is a road that's going to become the heavy vehicle bypass route for a town and doesn't have pedestrian facilities, and when it's wet or muddy, everybody's going to be basically walking in the shoulder. And most of the time, anybody in a mobility device or a wheelchair or pushing a pram will be walking in the shoulder anyway. So thinking often as an auditor, what's not there, what are the facilities that aren't there, is as important as what are the issues with the facilities that are there or are being built. And you can see there is another example. The gap. Yep, the gap's in the right spot. You're not going to be able to drive past a roundabout directional sign without looking for the gap, I reckon. Some of you may not have noticed it, even though you've probably driven past thousands of them in your life. Okay. Here we see pedestrians nicely crossing the crossing, and we see one pedestrian saying, I want to go that way. My desire line here, and I'll walk on the road a bit on the wrong side of this pedestrian fence rather than follow this bit that you would like me to follow. And that's a pretty important thing to understand as you're designing these areas. The pedestrian desire line is so strong that if you try to corral them like sheep, some of them will walk on the wrong side of the road in preference of taking that extra little bit of distance to cover. So ideally, we try and create these designs that are more sympathetic to the desire lines of pedestrians and really accommodate for that and can save us issues. But the use of pedestrian fencing for me is what you do in a very, very rare scenarios. I'm not a fan of pedestrian fencing at all, but occasionally it can be beneficial. But I do see it sort of put in so often where it serves a purpose for a bulk of the population, but then just significantly increases risk for those who are not, or where there aren't facilities provided and people don't walking, as like this one, walking on the road on the wrong side of it, just jumping it, like literally if there's no convenient way to cross the road, they'll just jump the fence. And you're getting all sorts of other challenges. So providing those facilities and trying to get them as convenient in desire line is possible. But where do I like pedestrian fences? Two spots in particular. One is outside of a pub or a bar or these sorts of drinking establishments. And that's based on doing a couple of coroner reports on fatalities involving pedestrians coming out of drinking establishments. And one of them was a fight, and they sort of fell out onto the street and were struck. And the other was somebody, they fell out, quite unclear how, staggered out, fell out, or whatever it was. So in these cases, the pedestrian fencing is to contain rather than to, stop people crossing at that point. So that's one. And the other is a bit the same. It's like outside of a school gate. It's a similar thing with the, kids running after a ball or, rough housing or whatever, playing around and coming out. And it's a similar thing. So more containing rather than trying to corral people into exactly where you want them to go. But maybe in some particular circumstances, it may be appropriate to really just corral in that spot if there's absolutely no other option. Any points coming in, Kathy? Here's here's a few, that's pedestrian desire line in a nutshell, isn't it? Where you've got, that's the design. There's a photo Kathy took after I talked to her about pedestrian desire lines, and it's quite an obvious thing. There's an example again of pedestrian desire line. This doesn't happen in New Zealand that much. I mean, but we're fairly aware of the need for community to be able to transfer one side to another of a new highway or the like, or these sorts of things. But it's really something to keep in mind if these new facilities. But around the world, it's often just horrific. I mean, these high-speed, World Bank funded highways separating communities and then not providing appropriate facilities for crossing and the like. And of course, the people are going to need to go from one side of the community to the other, and they will just have to take these extreme risks to do so. So if you're auditing in other countries, that's a real one to think about. Kathy, any questions or comments at this stage, or I keep ticking along?
All ticking along. Everyone's on the same page, I think.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple more sort of live examples or real world examples, and I'll talk through a few incidents now that I've investigated or colleagues have investigated. And so we're talking about crashes, serious injuries, fatalities, and trying to then learn from this. So when you look at a design or a existing road and to try to predict these in the future and stop them happening before they actually happen. So this photo here, you're sort of seeing what the driver would see. The next photo is taken from just here, just behind the little hazard board. So this is what the pedestrians see. So who has priority there? Like, who has right of way? And the answer to that is technically the car. The car has, the driver technically has priority. But from the pedestrian's perspective, it kind of looks like the pedestrians would have priority. And in a lot of these cases, the drivers are slowing down. Now, Nick's used a good word, a very interesting word there, courtesy. A courtesy crossing is something that you obviously do in New Zealand, which I have some trouble with. I mean, I think the idea can work in certain circumstances, but confusion of priority can lead to some pretty serious incidents, especially if there's speed involved. And I'm uneasy. If we can be very clear on priority, why wouldn't we be clear on priority? And unfortunately, this is one of those cases where, just like these two gentlemen walked out there, except for the driver who was approaching was not in the space of saying, I will be courteous, and was just driving through as they legally had a right to do. So just, and there was the incident there, serious injury occurred. So confusion of priorities becomes interesting. And then I've got a series of sort of things that are related to this. So this one was interesting, where the threshold treatment was being provided, and it's a nice, I like threshold treatments. They're great. They sort of show that you're entering into a lower speed environment and the like. There was a road safety audit undertaken on this one at design stage, and the auditor rightly picked up a potential confusion of priority for a pedestrian sort of walking up here. Would they think that that's their priority? Now, there's a bizarre bit of road rules, at least in Australia, which says that it is pedestrian priority for half of that, but that's an aside. But could it be made clearer? And the auditor's recommendation, or the audit team's recommendation under this one, was to use yellow instead of white, because that wouldn't be confused with regulatory line marking. Now, I think that's not going to work really. I mean, that's us, people who work in the field may understand that. I think that's asking a bit too much of the general public, and I think confusion is still there. So really, if we can be clearer with it, something like this provides a nice threshold into an area, a nice threshold there, and is fairly clear on priority, isn't it? So I'm not, you could do it the other way around. Create very clear priority with the right signage for pedestrians and cyclists, but just for me, be clear with who has priority. And they've got a variety of examples of unclear priority. Here's Launceston Airport. As you exit and you're running over to find your friend you haven't seen for years or whatever it is, and you going up to here, and you've got the other vehicles, taxis and the like going through there. I like this one because it's raised, but in terms of confusion of priority, it's quite there, isn't it, really? So why that would not just be made into a pedestrian crossing, I'm unsure. Anyway, more of these sort of potentially confusing crossings. But there you go. With the bit of the line marking and the signage and clearly stating its pedestrian priority. I think why would you bother with the courtesy crossing when you can make it regulatory? And let's get down in New Brighton there. Well done. And lots of different sort of examples of oddities out there that we can see. This one in Australia, there's the use of the legs to indicate to drivers that you have to give way. This contractor didn't quite pick that up and thought that they were legs to tell the pedestrians to cross at these locations. So post-opening audits and checks, even the designers got it right, the installer doesn't quite understand it. So the post-opening road safety audit would pick up things like that. All right, let's look at this one, and I'll get you to have a little bit of a think about it. So this is a coastal town, and I want you to imagine that you're looking at the design of this pedestrian crossing facility with curb outstands, or curb build-outs, as you might call them. So the signs, the landscaping, the bins, the signs, the markings. They've got these markings across the road, which are sort of just trying to make it a more slower environment. But what would you, at the design phase, if you were auditing the design, you've seen it, you've imagined it built just like this, are there any tweaks that you might ask to be made because you've identified things that could present a risk at the crossing point? So pop a few ideas in there. Okay. So we're seeing a few people saying the tree sort of hides that sign, as it does. So a bit of landscaping there. We've got some ideas to raise the crossing. I like that, making it slower. Visual clutter. Remove the, okay. Jeremiah's got so many good comments coming in. It's going off my screen, Kathy. I'm just, yeah. So Jeremiah and Simon have come in close to each other talking about the bins. I love the idea of raising the crossing. I'm going to give a prize there to Jeremiah on the bin, but these are sort of tweaks. I think everything everybody's pointing out is good, but the idea of having the landscaping and the bins on the approach side here just annoys me. like at design stage, they could have elected to have it on the departure side. And so if we have smaller pedestrians, you know, 10-year-old or the like who's coming up here, they're fairly well hidden, and we've got all the landscaping and everything hiding for the approaching vehicle. It was just put on this side. We open up that sight line. Yeah, you've got to make sure cars aren't parking in that bit, but it really, for no extra cost, it's just that, you know, we decided to put the bin there. But if we'd thought, you know, the auditors had thought about that sight lines on the approach, I think we would have had a better option there. Absolutely love the idea though of raising it. That would be great if you could as well. But thank you for all those great comments that came in, and sorry I didn't get to look through them all. Okay, here's another one, and again, looking at a tragic incident, but using it as hopefully a way we can prevent these in the future. This was a fatality and did an investigation on, and the pedestrian stepped out here and was struck by a vehicle going through here and killed. I'll show you what the driver sort of sees. So this is the driver's view. The pedestrian was here. You can see there's sort of curb ramp there, tram ramp. We go back a little bit further. You can see there, so the pedestrian was there. So you can see this is a high-speed road, 70km/h road. Slip into the service lane there. So why did this occur? Well, when you're standing out there, this photo is a really good example of why you've got to get out there on site in all of this, because when you're out there and you've got the green man, the ticking, tick, telling you to cross, it's so attractive to just step out there, and you know, your vision's out there and everything like that. It really draws you into taking that step. So it's sort of at that time, pedestrian priority all the way up to there, and that last little bit, it's not there. The speed vehicles are coming through here in the geometry of that slipping through there, and it's just a nasty sort of setup. So thinking about that continuity of priority or continuity of feature throughout the crossing line for pedestrians is important. So that one, after that incident, got some rectification, as you can see there, and now a raised crossing point, and is, you know, quite nice, all the lighting and everything there to help the pedestrian get that part. So, you know, it's unfortunate we have to have that incident, and then this happens. Ideally, we're going to get this stuff put in our design and the construction of the intersection itself. There you go. Interesting little wombat crossing here for those who play in that game. I mean, I call them wombat crossings, raised pedestrian crossings. I'm sure it's not all that, but just utilizing the existing drainage channel there. So it is still the down and up, but it's a lot cheaper than trying to put subsurface drainage through there and do other things. An interesting one.
When they're a step ahead, just they're like 30 seconds ahead of you every time. Hilarious.
What were that? Sorry, I missed the comments. Was it about the drainage? No,
yeah, just everything. It was just funny because someone's put not step free for disabled users, and you've gone there still a step down there. It's just great.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And somebody called it a Wally the Wombat crossing as well.
Yeah, don't count it on your wombat count. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know. I'm torn on this one. Just the cost of subsurface drainage, but this, yeah. Actually, I do have a photo of somebody with one of those walking frames trying to cross this one, and yeah, it wasn't great. But the one thing I did love was that the car sat patiently and waited. So I was like, anyway, for further discussion, maybe in a dedicated raised crossings course or something like that. Okay.
Good question. Use, see?
Use of tactile pavers,
Yes.
again, 30 seconds ahead. I'm just reading the comment here on the side. Yeah, okay. RTS number 14. Love this. I'm going to have a look at that. Thank you. Sorry. Let's talk about tactiles and creating that environment, and talking about that environment of creating accessibility for all road users. And now that's something we're really passionate about. It's great for our transport system. The challenge we've got is that a road safety audit is a road safety audit, okay? And we do have like the idea of a Disability Discrimination Act audit, or a, I can't remember what the particular term is in New Zealand, but that independent set of eyes, or somebody with that real knowledge of the needs of the varied road users we have in terms of pedestrians and wheelchairs, vision impaired and the like, to really go through and analyze that. And I really often make sure with my client that they understand that they're not going to get that full look from the road safety audit team, because we are not going to be absolutely checking the contrast of colors of bits and pieces and the height of specific handrails to the, does it comply with different codes and the like. That is beyond the scope of the auditor, unless they can really bring that home to a genuine concern of death or serious injury as a result of the road crash. So the idea of infrastructure being discriminatory or the like, that is a super important issue. But just make sure you're aware that that's not going to be picked up in a road safety audit as such, unless you really have a clear line at that being quite a magnitude of death and serious injury. So it's important just to define those two. Disability Commission under the Act. Thank you. That's good. Okay, let's get you doing a little exercise. Here's an intersection, and I'm going to get you to audit it, but you're looking for one particular spot where there's going to be at least 6 pedestrian crashes over a 5-year period, 3 of which are serious injuries, 2 of which are other injuries, luckily no fatalities, but in exactly the same crash type, in exactly the same spot, right? So the intersection, you can see there, it's got slip lanes, it's got a bit of a service road here, it's signalized, and I'm going to help you out a little bit. And so quiz time, but I'm going to help you out a little bit. I'm going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 crash scenarios. Okay, 5 crash scenarios. And I want you to pick which one you believe it's going to be. So we will we'll put a poll up in a second. I see some of you already jumping into it, which is fine. Now, you're going to pick, you can move the poll around on your screen so you can look at it, but the dotted line is the pedestrian. That's sort of universal in crash diagrams. A dotted line is pedestrian, solid line is vehicle. So you just pick 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 for those 6 fatalities. Sorry, not fatalities. 6 crashes. Handful of serious injury. Yeah, 4 serious injuries, I think. Yeah, as I said. 3 or 4. Yeah. Anyway, it's a lot. It's all the same crash time. So have a little bit of a think about that, and then we'll talk it through. Seeing lots of votes coming in already. All right, how are we going there? Almost everybody's had their say. We'll give it 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, you can stop that one there, Kathy. Let's display the results and let's see what we're picking. Okay, 1 and 2. People don't like 1 and 2. And so the majority are going with location 2, and the majority of you are correct. Whoop, that wasn't it. Location 2, it is. Now, why is that? Well, if you didn't pick location 2, don't worry too much, because I put all the others in because they present some level of risk. We talked about slip lanes. And we talked about the challenges they have. So they've got some inherent risk in them. Turning into areas, yeah, there's always that sort of risk and potentially vehicles blocking sight lines. It's always something to think about. This configuration of having a service road with access out of there is weird. It's odd. And so certainly I can understand the reason for that. But this one presents a specific issue, and let's just jump back to one that's cleared out a bit. And you can see there that let's look at this crossing over here first, though. Let's look at the way this goes. The pedestrian would get to this point, go into the island, and then cross the road. Okay, you go into the island and you cross the road. The island is here. The pedestrian doesn't go into the island, they're crossing there. And as a result, we have the slip lane and vehicles are turning onto the crossing point. So we don't like slip lanes, but at least this one is on the approach to the point where the driver's actually making their turn. So this is a real bit of a doozy there. So, and that one resulted in significant trauma to the community on somebody's choice, be it, to go to that location instead of going to there and then to there, or extending this and configuring that. And so what we're going to, be saying is, as a road safety auditor, what we want you to be able to do is identify that issue at the design stage and weed it out. And say, no, well, that's going to present a risk. Now, this can be very concerning for new auditors. You think, oh my God, what if I missed something like that? How would I? Yeah, that's not good. I would say don't get too concerned for a number of reasons. First of all, you are going to be auditing with a team, and you're going to have a lead auditor who's going to be mentoring you through this, and they're pretty good at thinking through this. Second of all, when you do an audit, you take a lot of time of thinking through this. And what I do at least, is I put myself in the driver's seat and then the shoes of pedestrians and cyclists and motorcyclists in my mind, and I'll do things. I'll drive as a driver in my mind up here and say, all right, I want to turn right. How am I going to do that? Okay, I'm coming up here. It's clear that I get into the right lane there. Okay, I've got the lights. I can see all the lights. That's good. Yep, and I do my right. I go, great. I want to do a U-turn. Okay, I'm going to come up here. Can I do a U-turn there? Is that going to work? Is that appropriate? Okay, I want to do a left turn now. Okay, I'm going to come up here. Okay, there are going to be cyclists, pedestrians. How am I going to do that? Do I turn in here and go out there? Am I going to go in here? Okay, I'm going to turn left now. Oh, okay, I'm turning left onto a pedestrian. And, you find it, you get there. So, you're walking through lots and lots and lots of scenarios. You'll be a bike rider and you'll go, okay, I'm riding my bike up here. I want to do a right turn. How do I do that? I want to do a left turn. I want to go this way. I'm a pedestrian. I'm walking from the hotel here over to the shopping center there. How do I do that? Okay, I've got to walk through here and I go over here. Okay, there's no footpaths. So what am I going to do? It's muddy. I'm going to walk along here. Just really working your way through all of that, imagining scenarios, spending lots of time doing it. So that's number 2 reason you don't need to get too concerned, because you're going to spend a good bit of time on it. I tried to get you to do that in 2 minutes and find the issue. And the third one is that we have these things called prompt lists and checklists to help you. They're not everything. They're not covering everything. You still got to be common sense looking at things, but we've got prompt lists and checklists that will help you. And we will show you those. So Ferg's going to present next one, and I'm going to talk you through a bit more of what prompt lists are and checklists and things that you utilize, especially as a new auditor, to really guide your thinking, make sure you're thinking along all these lines. So lots of sort of ways to try to help you identify lots of these types of issues. And for all road safety audits, we'd want to try to get out there at different times, at times when, it's peak hour, times when we're going to have increased activity like school, before school time, if there's a school in the area. And also, if there's a rugby match, the local rugby pitch, and if you could be there when there's a home game on and see how it operates, that's great. Practical reality may mean again that you can't, depending on what it is, but ideally looking at it in these different times of different use is great. Schools for me are like a really good, so good to see it when the kids are utilizing the facilities and the like. And in the recommendations, I mean, of course, there's all sorts of great recommendations around the whole design, geometric design, and different land use designs and all of that. But there's some specific pedestrian sort of technology or ways of crossing. We have puffin crossing. So this is where you have a little sensor, like when you walk up to a house at night and the lights turn on. It's the same technology, and it just holds the light red while there's movement on the crossing, and just holding your phases a bit. So they've got a puffin crossing, a pedestrian user-friendly intelligent crossing. Somebody in the early days decided to go a bird theme for pedestrian crossing facilities, and it seems to have been stuck to. So that they can be retrofitted nicely. This is one which is very much a lot of jurisdictions have requirements that bicycle riders don't ride across pedestrian crossings, and so this is called a toucan crossing, as in two can cross. I'm not making this up. It's what it's called. It's got a toucan crossing, as in pedestrians and cyclists can cross. Pelican crossing, so a pedestrian light controlled crossing, which is where the driver will see a red as the pedestrians are crossing. Then it goes to a flashing amber for a while, and then it drops to a green, just to give any pedestrians to take a bit more time to cross that extra bit of crossing. But if it's flashing, the driver can go through. Humped Pelican crossing, that's a UK sign. It's like made top 10 world most ridiculous signs. Makes perfect sense to me, but apparently the public are quite confused by what that possibly means. Pegasus crossing. So technically, a horse is a vehicle, and thus, in fact, you are fined for drink driving if you're intoxicated whilst riding a horse on the public road network. But Kathy, in an interesting little dig into the road rules, you are doing nothing illegal if you are riding an intoxicated horse.
I need to drinking my
Chardonnay. Chardonnay. No, Pegasus Crossing do exist. Anyway, I've got to keep moving on here. Okay, I said checklist prompt list. So there's lots of good stuff. So part 6 has got a whole new series of checklists we worked on for quite a while, adding lots and lots of stuff in there, trying to make it more contemporary than the old 1980s checklists that were in there. So putting stuff around intelligent transport systems, a lot more stuff on vulnerable road users, urban awesomeness rather than sort of everything around cars. So they have been absolutely redone, those prompt lists, and they're called prompt lists now in part 6 rather than checklists, because we discovered that people thought if they went through everything in the checklist, the audit was done. And we're like, no, they're just to prompt your thinking. They're not. That's not like, but the term checklist gave that impression of, okay, check that, check that, check that, check that, I'm done. No, we need you to just holistically think about it still. So now called prompt lists in part 6. In the current New Zealand guidance, you've got checklists, and we'll wait and see what comes out in the next one. But yes, using those, you'll be really well moved forward in your thinking. Okay, so timing this nicely to give people a little bit of opportunity to finish off that research assignment. Thank you to those who've reached out to get some clarification on the specifics of it, or just reach out to say, can you point me in the direction of any resources that you might have, or clarifying, what do you actually want us to, to present here. So given some information back there. Others, I'm sure, are starting to pull together a nice little fact sheet or a little video, a little bit of a recording or a dance or a MasterChef meal around Danish offset crossings or something, something exciting like that. So we'll give you a little bit of time to do that. You do have a quiz, Kathy. Is there a quiz?
Yes. Thanks for mentioning it. And,
oh, can't hear you now, Kathy. That's for sure.
What do I do?
Oh yeah, now we can hear you. Yep.
Oh, okay. My new computer is coming. Everything will be solved then. So just a reminder that the list of what you've got to do your research topic on is in here in module 1. And if we just jump back to, there we are, there's today's quiz as well. So just jump in and do the quiz for today, and that's all.
Is one of the questions, are you allowed to ride an intoxicated horse?
I hope not.
It's not. Thanks, everybody. There you go. You got 10 minutes to jump into some of that. We will see you next week. Have a good weekend. And after the end of next session, we do start to load on a couple of assignments. So you're going to have a desktop assignment. We're going to start looking through plans and looking for issues. And then the session after that, you're going to get your real audit at your site near your home or your office or wherever you told us.
Thank you. Thanks very much for everyone's participation today. Have a nice weekend.
Bye.
Bye.